Did you know until Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act was passed, I, along with 14% of Americans, didn't have civil rights? Hi, my name is Alexis. I'm 25 years old and I'm a civil rights activist with a disability. Despite great strides being made in disability legislation, the civil rights that we know today are still relatively in their infancy and do not provide full civil rights for those with disabilities. From harsh, discriminatory laws that made independent life for those with disabilities next to impossible until 1975, to discriminatory legislation still being experienced today. The civil rights of those with disabilities concerns everyone. Now that I've explained how young this legislation still is and why it might concern you, I want to explain to you life before and after disability legislation was passed. Disability is something that can affect anyone at any time. For example, according to the American Bar Association, 20-year-olds have a 1 in 4 chance of developing a disability within their lifetime. Before Section 504 was passed, society accepted that problems people with disabilities face, such as unemployment and lack of education, as personal failings because of the limitations imposed by the physical or mental disability. There were ugly laws barring people with disabilities from being seen in public. Here you can see an ugly law decree posted in a newspaper, with the last one being repealed in 1974. The legislation that protects people with disabilities in public, not just federal entities receiving federal funds, the ADA, was passed in 1990. This is 8-year-old Jennifer Keelan participating in the Capitol crawl before the ADA was passed. This would be a movement that would convince legislators to pass the ADA. While Section 504 and ADA provided protections to the civil rights of those with disabilities, many lawmakers have challenged Section 504 and the ADA throughout history. Now, disability protections are being challenged once again, this time by the current administration. Some regulations, for example, have already been withdrawn. AP News reported in April 2025 that the Trump administration withdrew 11 pieces of guidance related to the Americans with Disabilities Act back in March of this year. While the administration claims it withdrew this legislation because it was redundant and regulatory burden to businesses, many disability rights advocates are concerned that this is only the beginning to set precedent for repealing protections for people with disabilities. Even before this administration, the rights granted to those with disabilities have not brought true equity to this vulnerable population. Today, when people receive disability, they are limited on how many assets they can own, how much they can save, and how much they can work too. If you receive disability and get married, their income is now counts against you for qualification. People receiving SSI have a limit of $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple. Despite protection from discrimination in the workplace, many employers find subtle ways to avoid honestly accommodating employees with disabilities, like having lifting requirements in job descriptions that have nothing to do with the job posted. They include these requirements to deny people with disabilities or people with lifting restrictions employment while still maintaining plausible deniability. When given opportunities, people with disabilities are capable of living full, amazing lives and participating in their communities, and often working meaningful, fulfilling jobs to support themselves. So although you might not need accommodations as an able-bodied person today, you may need them in the future. Which is why it's important to care about disability legislation. And despite effective legislation for now, it's important to stay informed on disability legislation and be active in extending and protecting the civil rights of those with disabilities, because it affects all of us. When you can no longer work, become homeless, you have no family, and you've exhausted all of your other options, where do you go? Is it really fair to die in a country as plentiful as ours simply because of a life-altering circumstance that we often can't control? Is it really fair that someone is limited by society because they have a disability? Okay, I'm taking it.